Dave, welcome to the show. Happy to connect with you.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate you having me on.
I'm happy to have you here. So when you reached out, you told me that you talk a little bit about addictions, war on drugs, and you specifically help families with working through addictions. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Let me give you a quick background. I grew up in a big family whose various members had various addictions. Father was alcoholic who ended up leaving us eventually. I lost a brother to drugs and a sister-in-law to a heroin overdose. And so I knew what it was like to grow up in that kind of environment. Professionally, about 1991, I began working with young kids through high-risk kids and young adults through the Probation Department out of California as a probation officer. Moved to Chicago and was a school counselor back to probation, dealing with high-risk intensive probation unit, high-risk kids and families. And I became a gang investigator with the Sheriff's Department, again, working with young adults. And I am now a private investigator, and I work with families whose kids are using, abusing, addicted to drugs, and trying to help them. I wrote my book, Tip of the Spear, because as a part of a war on drugs, I realize how late to the party we are, and our reactive treatment has failed us. Our war on drugs has failed us. And so I'm trying to get ahead of the game and help parents help their kids deal with a very difficult time in this country. The most abused, the most addicted country in the world by far is the U.S.
Yeah.
And our kids need help.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So when we talk about things like war on drugs and the epidemic of addictions, what do you think the issue is here that we're trying to address? So with war on drugs, it was just say no, you're making a choice, and if you make this choice, then you need to be punished. Obviously, if that's a failed approach, then where do you think the approach is that we should be taking? Or let's just start with, what's the problem that we're trying to address?
Well, I think the problem is, again, that we come in too late. We don't come in until the problem manifests itself. And with addiction, you can't do that. It's too hard. The longer addiction has to grow, the harder it is, right? And unfortunately, this country has seen a lot of money to be made in building prisons to house those that are addicted. And now we got some great treatment centers throughout the country, but we have some bad actors also. And they're willing to take your money and not provide the correct treatment. 1 out of 10 people who have a substance use disorder actually get the proper treatment. If a person is going to treatment, the average number of times is 6. It is a system that does not work. And there's not a lot of money to be made in proaction, in teaching parents how to teach their kid. But there's a lot of money to be made in the effects of addiction.
Yeah.
And we need to realize, parents need to realize, nobody's coming to our rescue. There's no legislation, there's no laws, there's no enforcement that has done anything to stop the addiction count in this country. And we need to change our ways. And I believe that's through the families, through the neighborhoods, through the communities, but mainly through the parents. Our kids need a fighting chance here, and we're not giving it to them.
Okay. So yes, there's so much fraud, we could say. And that seems to be one of the buzzwords of today, where we're finding all of these systems that are designed, or they present themselves in some sort of Orwellian fashion as the thing that's going to help us, are really at best just fraudulent and corrupt, where they're just taking our money and offering a sham of a service, which is not useful or helpful. We could go even further to say that those institutions are actually perpetuating the problems that are then creating the addictions to begin with, which is one of the dominant beliefs through common culture today, which is that people are very easy to control and manipulate when they become dependent on the system. And so the societal decay that we see is, which we would manifest in like addictions, is in some sense intentional then to create this problem where the system can then justify offering themselves as the solution. And you're saying here that the institutions themselves, not the approach or not the answer to look at. Instead, it's providing parents with resources, information, knowledge, and some skills and tools to address addictions in their early stages. Is that right?
100%. Now, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big proponent of therapy and counseling, and there's so many good people that are dedicating their lives to helping people. Rehab centers, treatment centers, there are some really good ones. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with addiction, there's so many causes of addiction: trauma, genetically, depression, anxiety. It's very hard to come up with why a person is getting high. It's different for all of us. And the flip side of that is the path to recovery is different for all of us. I can't send all of my people to one treatment center. It's not going to work. It's not a fit. It's a difficult process. My point is to undermine addiction before you have to reach that point. And it takes effort. It takes knowledge. It takes education. And it takes having faith that if we do these things for our kids, they will make the right decision. Right now, our kids aren't making the right decision. And where are they getting their information? Every kid in this country is going to be introduced to drugs 3 ways: through social media, through family, and through friends. Now, if you don't have they don't have a phone, they don't have a computer, they don't have family members, and they don't have friends, then maybe your kid, you can will be saved from this introduction to a drug. But if they're not, they're going to be introduced to them. And we need to give our kids facts. We got to educate our kids on what can really be the consequences and repercussions of not just addiction, but abuse and use.
Okay. Now, the idea of giving people information about drugs and educating them, I mean, this was the foundation of programs like DARE, Drug Abuse Resistance Education, which is what my generation was given all through elementary school and into middle school. When we look at people who are really addicted to a drug and they're losing their families, they're losing their jobs, they lose their lives, they lose their health, they're using a substance despite the fact that they know that it's killing them. There's some amount of conscious choice here to continue using a substance when they're in that state. So they have the information, they know what this substance is doing to them, and the information, the knowledge in itself isn't enough to want them to, or help them want to stop using the substance. So why do you think it is that addictions are so prevalent right now? So let's talk about the cause of addiction is what I'm getting at here. Okay. You mentioned some things like trauma and genetics. I've reviewed lots of literature, as you know, I got a master's degree in this, and never found a compelling argument for genetics. In fact, I found lots of arguments and a whole slew of research that suggests that the whole genetic argument is not really based in much of anything credible evidence. But what I have found in what you're mentioning here is that 100% of the people that I've ever worked with who are addicted have trauma. And the addiction then provides something of a relief from that trauma. So what have you seen in this sense in terms of what are the causes of addiction here and what can we do with it?
Well, and I disagree a little bit with the genetic part. When I say genetics, I'm not saying you have an addiction gene in your blood. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is you might be prone to depression. You might be prone to anxiety. You might be prone to bipolar. You might be prone to schizophrenia genetically, dementia. All these things are can be handed down genetically, and these are reasons why people turn to drugs. It's a self-medicative act. Okay, and I do think that, and it took me a while to reach this. I mean, I'm going on 35 years professionally and over 60 years total dealing with addiction and the repercussions of it. And I believe it is a disease. We should treat it like a disease. Now, that first drink is a choice. That first hit, dab, tap, whatever you want to snort, that's a choice. But after that, there's no child, there's no adult on that first hit knows how they're going to react. And, me, it didn't affect me. My brother, it affected the first one, and he felt really good. And I can tell parents, I can tell what your kid's doing, how they're doing it, who they're doing it with, when they're doing it. I can't tell you why. And your kid might not know either. And so that's what I mean when I'm talking about genetics. And of course, we all have trauma. Everybody. The human species seems to think that we should not have trauma in our lives. Well, every species has trauma. And some of us deal with it better than others. Some of us can't deal with it. So nobody takes that first drink, and they like it, and they can't control it. Not everybody can control it because it feels so good. It makes them feel happy when they were sad. It makes them, feel more comfortable with themselves. It eases their anxiety. However, an addiction is to keep doing something even though it's negatively affecting your life. And nobody wants to be estranged from their family. Nobody wants to drop out of school. Nobody wants to lose jobs. Nobody wants, hurt the people they love. Nobody wants the people they love to tell them, I can't deal with you anymore. Nobody wants that. But that's where the addiction comes in. They continue despite these negative consequences.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you on that last part there for sure. But I do have a little bit of a disconnect here on the way that we look at addictions as being either a disease or a choice. I don't really find that either of those are particularly helpful. If we rely on saying my depression, my anxiety, my addictions are genetic, then what I become is a victim to chance or circumstance, and I have no real way to interact with that. If it's just my genes, then there's really nothing I can do. And I don't think that that's really the case. The disease model in itself, I think, is if you have heart disease, then again, you're at kind of the whim of it. There are things that you can do with it, but there's something that's sick inside of you. Personally, I find looking at the addiction as an adaptation. It provides some sort of relief, something that is useful, some sort of defense that serves a purpose. When you're talking about it soothes my depression, it soothes my anxiety, those are adaptations. So the addiction is serving a purpose. So when I'm working with somebody who's addicted and I ask them, not what are the things that are going wrong with your addiction, they'll tell me all day, all the things that you mentioned, which is I lose my family, I lose my job, so on and so forth. But when I ask what goes right with the addiction, it's exactly what you're saying here. It's a relief from pain. It takes all these things that I'm going through, which are unbearable, and it makes them a little bit easier to go through. So this isn't necessarily like a disease as in there's something sick inside of me. It's that my experiences have been very painful and overwhelming, and I don't have the capability to navigate that. So then the addiction provides some sort of relief in the form of a disconnect from that pain. And I find that if we look at the addiction through that sense of what is it doing right for me? what is the thing that's working here rather than what's not working? And then how can we address those things? Then we have a little bit of room to actually work with the addiction. And I find that there's a lot of success in that too.
I find that the marketing and our species loves to do what they want, not necessarily what they need. And I find that the people that I've dealt with over the years is definitely addiction is to help them with something else in their life.
Mhm.
And it might be major trauma or it might be minor trauma. Everybody deals with it differently. But when you start using drugs at an early age, the brain, it is very, the brain and the body, it is a very consequential act.
Mhm.
If you start just getting high when you're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, it's a very
Yeah.
consequential act on the brain.
Mhm. Of course.
But unfortunately, when I tell you the legalized marijuana industry is doing no favors to the kids, and if I tell you, we can have that discussion, but if I tell you the three biggest donators, investors, and lobbyists for the legal marijuana industry in this country is tobacco, alcohol, and pharmaceutical companies. So that should give you some idea of their intent. And they are not marketing a product that's healthier for us, that's safer for us. They're marketing a product that is addictive and can make them a lot of money, unless they've changed their behavior. Unless 50, 60, 70, 100 years they've changed with marijuana. So we have to be very aware of, why exactly we are the most addicted country in the world. And, when you say that, I see heart disease, you're right. Heart disease, we can look at that as a disease. And you're also right how you deal with it, right? Diabetes, right? You have somebody that deals with diabetes by eating healthy, working out. And you have somebody that deals with it by going to fast foods and buying big gulps. It's much different. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be out there trying to help both of those people to find
course.
something else besides what they're using, because
Yeah,
what they're
of
using
course.
is detrimental and it is consequential in their life.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't argue that consuming cannabis or any of the other really harmful drugs like alcohol, for instance, at an early age is incredibly detrimental as your brain, your nervous system, your hormonal systems are all developing at that time. But relying on the substance is not the first it's not the first line of defense. The addiction there didn't start with going towards the substance. If we look at the addiction as it's providing an escape, it provides a relief. Well, a relief or an escape from what? And then we say, oh, there was something in this person's life that they were experiencing that they were unable to be with. And then so the substance later on then provided that relief. If we go back before that, we find that the addiction didn't start with seeking a substance. The addiction started with trying to disconnect from the present moment, from their experience.
Right.
So
100%. 100%.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for kids, if they're going through something that's overwhelming or painful, there's only a couple ways that they can deal with it. They can set boundaries with it. But I mean, if you try and set boundaries with your parents when they're being abusive, then that usually makes things more dangerous. And as kids, we most times don't know that we can set boundaries. So that's out of the window. We can go away physically, which is what a lot of kids do. I did that when I was 12 years old. I left physically because the situation was so bad that being on my own was less threatening. But at that point, the addiction's already fully developed for a lot of people, and going away physically isn't exactly an option. The most likely adaptation that we have towards these experiences is that we go away mentally. So when the experience is so overwhelming, we can't deal with it, we check out, we disconnect. The feelings of emotions that we have, the way that our body's responding to it, we disconnect from it. And as the experience gets more intense or it becomes more chronic and we don't have the ability to escape, then the substance comes in. So I'm in complete agreement with you that using a substance early in life is detrimental, but we're missing the point here of they're already trying to escape. If they're already looking for a substance, or if a substance comes to them and they're utilizing it, their situation's already been so bad that they're trying to escape from it. That's why the substance has so much value.
But you have to think about how diabolical addiction can be. And I don't care what you're addicted to.
Mm-hmm.
Be porn, social media, your phone.
Hamburgers.
An addiction is an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And it creeps up on you. And it's not, you know, it's not like one day you wake up and you think, I'm going to probably be addicted today, or maybe tomorrow's a good day to get addicted, or maybe I'll wait till next week to get addicted, or I'll stop. It creeps up on you. And unfortunately, everybody has a history. You have yours, I have mine. And it's like I said earlier, everybody's path to addiction is different. Everybody's path out of it is addiction. And for me to try to say, my way is the best way, or how I deal with things is the best way, doesn't fit for not the next 9 people that walk through that door, maybe the 10th, I don't know. But it's a very nebulous, complex system we're dealing with when you talk about the brain and the body and our emotions and tying it all into one. And when you take a substance and you circumvent any one of those three, you're not sure what you're going to end up with. We're not that advanced. And you start adding things or taking things away, and it can be a very consequential act. And don't think that the big companies that are marketing to our kids don't know that. Nobody gets addicted to something when they're 30. Rarely, give or take. They know you get addicted when you're 15, 16, 17. And by the time you realize you're addicted, by the time you realize has a negative impact on your family, you can't stop. And you cannot stop. Lots of, I met a lot of people there. Some of them aren't here anymore. My brother being one of them. They cannot stop. They need more. That's how this works.
Mm-hmm.
They need a better high. And unfortunately, we're living in a world where it's much more prevalent and accessible, and much more lethal. And, it's a very dangerous time. And I hear what you're saying, Julian, but it's also it's difficult to walk up to a mom who lost a kid and start saying, well, this is the primary reason. Maybe these are secondary reasons. Maybe third. These are the, tertiary reasons why your child did the things they do. They don't.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to know what happened to their 17-year-old that they're not going to see anymore, and we are not doing enough to help them.
Yeah, that's a really painful situation, isn't it?
It's the worst.
And yeah, it really is. I've had a lot of people who had lost their children and came to me from that. They lost them to addictions, to suicide, to numerous things. And the parent who lost them, despite all of that pain and the regret of losing them, they played a role in it too. And by looking at the role that they played in this circumstance, that's where they have some real choice in what they can do with it. And as painful and as difficult as it is to look at those dynamics and see how we contributed to those situations or how we created those situations, this is really the path of reclaiming some autonomy in terms of how we can work with this. So we might be too late in seeing that we played a role in this, but we can make changes in that sense. We can start to take responsibility and accountability and empower ourselves to do things differently. And we can honor the people that we've lost in the past by changing the way that we're living today. It's incredibly difficult to do, but I find that this is really empowering for a lot of people who have lost their children or lost loved ones in that sense, because I'm not we're not putting the blame on the parents here. We're not saying it's your fault that this happened to. Instead, what we're saying is you're a part of a pattern. You learned things from somebody, probably from your parents, who learned things from their parents. And then it played all the way down to this generation where this was the effect. So rather than ignoring it or placing the blame on anybody, if we can take that accountability for it, we can build awareness to the circumstances that are creating these addictions. I find that it really gives people a sense of autonomy, and we can really start to liberate ourselves from that sense of those patterns. I'm curious, Dave. You work with a lot of families in this sense. What kind of support and resources do you give to people, we could say after the fact of something terrible like this happening, or ideally before the thing happens when they're in it and they're looking for support?
Well, that's a really good question, especially following what you just said, because I agree with you 100%. Now, but saying that, I have worked with families who parents are intact, parents don't do any drugs, parents don't do any drinking. It's very little trauma, very little, and their child has a substance abuse issue.
Yeah.
On the other
Well,
side, I've dealt, and
saying that it's little is really, really difficult because we're assigning a judgment to it. I find
it
that you can have really loving, attentive parents who care so much about their children, but they consulted their doctors on how to be the best parent. And the doctor said, don't hold your kid when they cry. So then they got, did I lose you?
anyway,
Yeah,
sorry about that. Where were we?
we were talking about trauma,
Yes.
saying yeah, like I was saying right before, there is, I've worked with so many people who said that they had perfect childhood, their parents were super loving, and that was probably true. But little things like the parents can consult medical experts who say, don't hold your baby when they cry. And so the fundamental development that's required of being held and connected, learning how to soothe emotions, never develops. Or their parents might be physically present, very loving, but they're so stressed and occupied with work and finances that they're present, but they're emotionally unavailable or mentally not present. And these are highly traumatic. They might not be, bombs dropping on your neighborhood or physical or sexual abuse, but this is just as painful and just as difficult for children to work with. So this right here creates that inability to really be with the present moment, to be with emotions and navigate them, which then leads us to the disconnect where emotions or addictions are very powerful later in life.
Well, certainly, half of my book was written for parents and shows the impact that they can have on their child in a positive way.
Hmm.
And the opposite is true, the impact they can have on a negative way.
Of
But when
course.
I talk about these families who seem to have life as much together as they can, it's called life, right? I mean, it's it's not easy. There's going to be pitfalls, and you do as best you can, and there can still be trauma coming out of that. Um, but the kids are getting bombarded through social media and influencers
Hmm.
and clicks, and parents have a very hard time battling
Of
that
course.
because,
Yeah.
especially we didn't have that. We didn't deal with it. I have yet to find a parent who is more adept um, at pulling things up on their computer than their 14-year-old.
Hmm.
Our kids are a keystroke away from buying clothes that can, so they can get high in class without the teacher knowing. That's how they market it, that sort of thing. So, yeah, there is trauma in life. You're right.
Yeah.
It's life. But there's so many other things too that parents have to be aware of that are coming from external forces,
Yeah.
um, and branding our children with so much. I had a kid last year who she had a math test coming up and she's really nervous, so she um, got a Snapchat and found a drug market, and the guy had delivered her really potent THC in about 10 minutes to the school parking lot. I mean, we never had to deal with that when we were kids, and parents need to understand what they're
Sure.
dealing with. And you're right, and what they can do to
Yeah.
educate and love their child and see what their child is up against every day.
Yeah.
Um, but you're right. Parents, we got the power, man. Um,
Yeah.
and, some, again, parents, even the NIH, CDC, it's like the parent, I don't care what this topic is, the parent will have the most impact on their child than anybody in this world, partly because
Absolutely.
nobody gives a damn about your child, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Um, Strangers, influencers, that kind of thing. They want their clicks, they want their money. And nobody knows the child like a parent, especially the mom. Mom's got a superpower. Men don't have it. Um, moms have intuition, sorry. And they know when something's not right. They know the kid's faults, their strengths. When nobody knows a child like the mom, and
Yeah.
dad's
And
in a close second.
unfortunately, though, so much is stacked against parents today where
Yeah.
they're so stressed with work and finances and
Mm-hmm.
making a living. And I
Mm-hmm.
know so many people who had children and within weeks they had to go right back to work. And so then the kid goes
Mm-hmm.
into the daycare system.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I agree with you 100%. The most important thing for healthy development is the relationship here. But so many parents don't have the capacity to do that. So the kids are spending 8+ hours every single day with their peers as their leader, with maybe one, government official as a teacher or mentor or supervisor. And so all of the social media, all of this bombardment of information all becomes so much more powerful because
Mm-hmm.
the children don't really have a guiding star at that point. The parents
Right.
are not the main force, and they should be. So I think that this right here is really pointing to the beginning of the addictions. This is the starting piece for the addictions. Is this relationship is the most important thing to a developing child, and it is under so much stress. And the ability for parents to establish that healthy functional relationship for the first 15, 18 years of a kid's life is almost non-existent and impossible today. The cards are just so stacked against them.
Well, I wouldn't say it's impossible because then you might well just give up because we're not changing. Social media is not going away. Our
Right.
classrooms right now, our education isn't getting better. Our
Yeah.
classes are not getting smaller. If they do, it's because parents are having less kids because it's so difficult to raise kids today.
Hmm.
It's not going away. We still have big corporations that are making a lot of money,
Yeah. But we need
and
to do something.
parents have to work hard. Until that changes,
Hmm.
I don't know how to change that. Okay, but I do know that when I talk to parents, you come home and ask your kid, "Give me 2 minutes. I love you. I love you more than life itself. Give me 2 minutes. I want to see how you're doing." Be
Yeah.
surprised. 2 minutes can turn into 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 10, 20 minutes,
That's right.
and then use that as a jump off point to talk about whatever you want. Maybe talk about social media and how you feel. But
Yeah.
what I like to do is give parents drug facts that
Hmm.
they don't know. A, a, a quick, I try to stay away from a lot of facts that just kind of go in one ear out the other. But 90% of parents think drugs are bad for their kids.
Hmm.
77% of their kids don't think drugs are bad for them. So where's the miscommunication? Where's the disconnect in that one,
Yeah.
Julian? Where do you think what's going on there? It's just
Yeah.
they're not talking.
They're not talking, and it's a lot of do as I say and not as I do. So how many parents, when their kid is
Mm-hmm.
fussing, they put a tablet or a phone in front of them today? That's a drug. That's a disconnect. That's a
Yeah.
stimulation that's going to disconnect the kid from the present moment, having adverse effects, but we persist to do it. So the parents say, don't do this, but then they do it anyway. And the parents have, again, everybody's got an addiction of some sort or another. So we can tell our kids, don't do drugs, don't develop an addiction. But unless we address the addictions in ourselves, the words don't translate. There's a misalignment between what we're saying and what we're doing. And that's what our kids really pick up on, I think, is they're
For
going to
sure.
internalize and soak it in through experience.
You're absolutely right, but it's marketed that way too. The
Hmm.
inclusivity. My kids every day walk to school and they pass a dispensary that said, big sign, big smiley face, said, a friend with weed is a friend indeed. Now that's cute, funny for the guy who's got
Yeah.
his life together, who's on his way to work to pay
Hmm.
off his house and come back home to his wife or a relationship. But what's that message given to a 12-year-old riding their bike?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah,
You
and
know?
we're in complete agreement that the
Yeah.
messaging and the marketing and the institutions out there are very malicious and diabolical in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
I have zero trust in the mainstream institutions, even going into healthcare. Almost every government institution, I do not trust it.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it is. These are absolutely marketed towards kids in that sense. And again, if the parents don't have the relationship with their kids, if they haven't built the connection where the
Hmm.
parent is the most important relationship in the kid's life.
Hmm.
And again, it's so difficult to do that. I won't say it's impossible because I've seen it. I've seen it happen in today's age. I see people in my generation raising kids outside of all of that. It is certainly possible, and there is a lot of power of what we can do here. And it's very difficult because if you got to work a job or if your kid goes to school, they're spending half, three quarters, 80% of their time away from their parents. And
Hmm.
so it's so
Hmm.
difficult to build these relationships, and those systems, the institutions that you're talking about, they prey on it and they know how
They
to get
do.
right in there.
Right. And we're not changing that, at least not in my lifetime. But the one thing parents can control is the time with their kid and
That's right.
what goes into their kid's brain. And you're
Hmm.
right. You come home. I know everybody's got addiction, but you come home and you have your glass of wine or two or
Hmm.
three.
Yeah.
Your kids notice. You come
Hmm.
home and you take your gummies because your knee hurts or your back hurts. Your
Hmm.
kids notice. So let's have a little faith in our kids and be able to explain to him why, despite it being legal and illegal for anyone under 21, but why you can do that as an adult and why
Hmm.
they cannot. I mean, we don't seem to have a hard time explaining to our 15 and a half-year-old that they cannot drive a car ever. I know in this state, they have to go to class for 50 hours. They have to drive with the parent for 10 hours. They have to drive with a professional for 6 hours. They have to pass a written test, a driving test. Then they have access to something that can do them or the neighborhood very serious harm. And we're okay with separating that. But
Hmm.
why is it with um, weed? I get parents to
Yeah.
say, I did it and I turned out fine. It can't be that bad for them. It's everywhere. How do I stop it? Um, that's our job.
Yeah. Well,
That's our
I look
job
at
to
it.
protect our kids.
Yeah. I'm looking at it like this, which is the parents, if they're having a few glasses of wine, taking their gummies, or perhaps just checking out and scrolling on their phone,
Mhm.
that's how they're managing their emotions. That's how they're managing the feelings of in their body. So if they're in pain and they're taking gummies for that, that's how they're managing pain. You can tell your kids, don't manage your emotions this way. Don't manage your pain this way. They don't pick up on the verbal. They're not listening. That's not how they're learning. The way that they're learning is their body is quite literally downloading the information of how to manage pain, how to manage emotions, how to navigate experiences in life. This happens long before the kid's even able to speak. While their body is developing exponentially as infants and as children, it is downloading that information from their parents. And so the parents are unable to work with their own emotions, unable to navigate overwhelming and difficult experiences, and they adapt to it by checking out, by using some sort of substance, whether it's scrolling on your phone or disconnecting in other ways through drugs and substances. They're adapting to those circumstances in that way. The child internalizes that. Their body is memorizing that and soaking it in from their parents. So we can say all the things that we want, but their body their nervous system, their hormonal system, their neurological circuits are learning a completely different message, which is when something's painful, when it's overwhelming, check out, disconnect from it through these means. And then you find your drug of choice. It could be gambling, it could be food, it could be the internet, it could be sex, it could be dangerous situations, it could be drugs, alcohol, heroin, cannabis, whatever. They're all the same at that sense. They provide the same disconnect. And that's what we're learning from our parents.
I agree. But it's also parents have the ability to do things in moderation. Kids don't have that ability yet. That's why kids jump off roofs, right? That's why
Sure.
kids do things before they think.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when I was a kid, to try to buy some weed or cannabis, you know how hard that was? Somebody's older brother knew somebody that worked with somebody whose sister might have some. It was very difficult.
Hmm.
It's very simple now. It's
Yeah.
a keystroke away.
It's everywhere.
And parents need to understand that the landscape has changed. And, if, you are an adult and you can use something that, yeah, it's taking up your time, but are there negative consequences to it?
Hmm.
Okay. If I come home or anybody comes home and has a glass of wine and I do that every day, is there a negative consequence to that? If there is, then maybe it is an addiction.
Hmm.
If there's not, maybe it is not. These kind of conversations have to take place between the parents and the children. And we have to
Yeah.
stop thinking our children can't understand the motives for the things we do. They can.
Right.
We just don't have those conversations.
Yeah. It's
And
coming back to the relationship.
it always comes back to the relationship, Julian.
It's that simple. I know it.
Always.
Yeah.
And, it's, again, my kids, we've had a lot of, I have a lot of people in my family are alcoholics to some level, drug
Hmm.
users. And my kids need to know that. They do know that. They do know what I grew up with. And if that may have come out in how I raised them, unknowingly, maybe,
Hmm.
consciously, subconsciously.
Right.
But they needed to know. And they took it in and they do. They understand it. These kids, I know it's the right of every generation to kind of rip on the generation that follows. I find it pretty rich. My generation, I'm at the end of the baby boomers, love to talk about the kids today as being self-centered, self-absorbed,
Yeah.
narcissists. Um,
How painful.
and and that generation, baby boomers, were nicknamed the me generation by their parents. So it's
Hmm.
rich, right? And what goes around comes around. Um, but we have to have faith as adults. For one, it's our duty to protect the kids and educate the kids. And we have to have faith that our kids are going to take that information and do right by it and use it to their advantage. Right now, they're obviously, with the one stat I read to you, they're not getting that information. Um, and it's, again, we are the most addicted country in the world. We need to start looking at why. There's depression everywhere in the world. There's
Hmm.
anxiety. There's trauma everywhere in the world. But we are still the most addicted country.
Yeah.
Um,
Highest suicide rates, highest rates of depression, highest rates of
yes.
anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
You know,
know?
you're bringing up something really important here, Dave, which is that analogy of the right of every generation to demean the next generation, which
Mhm.
is what we learned from our parents. That's the intergenerational trauma right there. That's my parents treated me this way. It caused all this pain and harm inside of me. I never did anything with it. I haven't processed it. I haven't soothed it. I haven't addressed it. Now it
Mhm.
comes out of me and it goes on to the next generation. It could be something as simple as just joking, which it can be seen as something very small, but it can be very painful and demeaning. And what's the message you get as a kid when your parents are always saying you're not good enough, or you're inadequate, or you're stupid, or you're self-centered? It's, yeah, I'm not deserving, I'm not good enough. So I think the most important thing here, what we're talking about, is the power that we have is to address the pain that's inside of ourselves, to address how we manage this pain and what we do with it so it doesn't come on to the next generation. And in doing that, we show them, what do you do with pain? You don't have to rely on checking out. And this is where our real power is addressing those patterns that are inside of ourselves.
Well, you're right on with that, Julian. I spent 20 years working probation, and this is back in the 80s or 90s and and 2000s, mid 2000s. And it was very common when a young adult or a teenager had a drug abuse problem, I would recommend that we send them to rehab, inpatient.
Yeah.
Depending on their insurance, which is another problem that we have when we let my insurance agent on Main Street determine how long my child's going to be in rehab or get counseling or get help. That's a problem. But that's
Or
a whole,
where and what
whole
kind.
nother
Yeah.
issue, Julian. This show's not long enough for that. But I'd recommend to the judge, we've tried everything. Nothing's working. I'm afraid he's going to die. I'm afraid he's going to overdose. He needs to go to rehab, get this under control, go to rehab, sometimes for months. The child would work so hard. Look at their triggers. Look at trying to figure out, try to peel the onion to get down to the bottom of what was causing what was the underlying thought process of their behaviors. They do great in this simulated environment. They'd come home to the same house,
Same
to
patterns.
the same triggers they left, to the same dysfunction, and it would take them hours sometimes before they started
go right
using
back to the
again.
same adaptation.
And
right?
it doesn't work. It does not work. We can't send our kids away to get fixed. It doesn't work like that. And talking to families, this is a family affair. You have somebody that's hurting. The family is also hurting,
right.
to some extent. All the siblings, everybody in that household is hurting. And everybody has to engage in a process that makes it a healthier home, whether that's counseling, therapy, setting time to talk to each other, setting up new parameters, new expectations, new accountability, not just for your child, but for yourself also.
Precisely.
Everybody is accountable. If you're living in that house, everybody plays a role. And it is a family affair. There's no sending the kid away to get help. And, also you go see I talked to the mom the other day, said, you got to go see a counselor, a therapist. And she initially took that as, I'm thinking she's the weak link here. It was just the opposite. She was the strongest, but I needed her to be even strong. I needed her to understand herself a little bit better, and got her to understand that this isn't a selfish act. You're not going to make yourself better, period. You make yourself better, your child gets better, your partner gets better, your siblings get better. This is a pebble in the pond. And all of us, again, right? This isn't this world, there's trauma. Little bits, a lot, it's everywhere. Every species. You're not going to avoid it, but deal with it. And you're going to be better for it. And your child's going to be better for it. So, as I talk to these families, it starts with you. You get stronger. Your partner gets stronger. Your child's going to get stronger. And the second part of your question, sorry, I went on a little bit, but what do? You ask for help. Nobody's coming and knocking on your door saying, hey, do you have a problem? Does your child have a problem? Need help with that problem? Nobody. You have to reach out. Your child spends 8 hours a day at school. Contact the school. Contact the counselor there, the therapist. Very easily say, I'm seeing some things in my kid that worry me. I'm scared. I'm fearful. Can you help? I've worked with schools for 30 years. They
Yeah.
love that parent, by the way,
Yeah, but
that
that
asks for
parent
help.
usually is very scared to do that. Just like you were talking
Very.
when you said to that mom, "Hey, you need to get some help," and she immediately internalizes that as a threat. As in, you're saying, I'm the weakest one. This is
Well,
so hard for people to ask for help because they're so scared of being seen that they're not good enough or they're not strong enough or they failed in some way. And asking
sure.
for help in that sense is, conceding that there's something wrong with me. That's the belief that so many people have. And
Mm-hmm.
this is one of the things that, yeah, we've got to work with right away. It's one of I agree with you, asking for help is just essential. But this right here is one of the barriers that is stopping people from it is the belief of I'm not good enough or I have to do it all on my own.
Well, that's what addiction brings isolation.
Hmm.
If your kid is using and you bring it up, they're going to yell at you. They might get violent. They might throw things that you don't want to deal with them. You don't want to come home like we were talking from a hard day's work. You got to make dinner. You got to clean the house. And now you're going to address your child's substance use
Yeah.
and start an argument. And now they're going to run or fight or whatever's going to happen. That's how good addiction is. It's really, really, really good at putting people up, making people stay away.
Yeah. It's a
My
defense.
my own brother, so many times I took him to the methadone clinic. I picked him up from bad neighborhoods when he copped his heroin. I picked him up from jail. I took him to rehab. It gets old. It gets tiring. I have a life too. I remember telling him, like, I got a kid coming. I can't be doing this. I can't pick you up from a bar. I can't do this. It's just what the addiction wanted. That's what he wanted. He didn't want me close by to give him a hard time. He wanted me close by when he wanted my help.
Hmm.
And as time passes, my brother died in a basement apartment of which I was never invited to, nor I ever visited. The drugs had my brother right where they wanted him. And that's what they do, It's people are shamed by it. People feel guilty by it. People are in fear of it. People don't want the neighbors to know.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what addiction wants.
Yeah.
You can't give it what it wants. And the flip side of that is your child says he hates you, never wants to see you again. Um, it's not your child talking. It's their addiction. And so I say, when you talk to a kid, say, give me 2 minutes. Let's just talk. Don't say, give me 20 minutes so we can talk about your behavior or 20 minutes so I can shame you for the things that you're thinking or doing or saying. Give me 2 minutes and let's talk. And maybe um, we'll be able to extend it into something really meaningful.
Yeah. Or
Connection.
if your kid's saying that they hate you and they want you to stay away, maybe that's not the addiction that's speaking. Maybe that's the pain and the trauma of the relationship, the dynamic
Could
between
be.
the two.
Certainly
Yeah.
could be. But if the kid is addicted, you really don't know what their emotions are anymore. I mean, that's my whole life was spent a career is kids entering the criminal justice system. 90% of them were either high when they did it, or they committed the crime to get high, or they've been getting high for a good long time, and their cognitive behavior skills were awful. Their thinking skills were awful. Therefore, their actions were awful. So you don't know who you're talking to until you get the drug use under control. You really don't. It affects the brain that much, and you probably have seen it. I mean, when somebody starts using at the age of 13, and now they're 23, they still have maturity level of a 13-year-old. It stops.
Yeah. Well, you
It
can see that,
ends.
and you can see that in a lot of people, regardless of the addiction that they have, which is, I mean, we say this about a lot of our parents is that they're just kids who just got older, where they never learned how to recognize or identify emotions. They
Hmm.
never learned how to process emotions.
Right.
They never learned how to express emotions in healthy, constructive ways, let alone comfort and soothe their emotions. So those emotions are just this jumbled up, immature mess where they're just, nobody knows what to do with them. And again, that's where the addictions come in, because they provide relief to that and they provide an excuse for all of that. So even when there's no substance abuse, we see those same dynamics there. And even when we take the substance abuse out, those dynamics are still there. I find that not knowing what to do with emotions, not knowing how to navigate hardship, difficulty, pain, loss, discomfort, not knowing how to engage with life. This is the foundation that nobody's really, I mean, I won't say nobody, but the vast majority of people in our society are not learning today. And that's why the addictions are just so powerful for them, is it provides a relief from that. And then of course, yes, you start using a substance at an early age and your hormonal system and your neurological circuits are all out of whack, but they were already undeveloped and immature prior to that as well, which is why the addiction was so powerful for them in the first place.
No, well, that's partly why it's so hard to stop, and that's why people go to rehab time after time after time. I was with somebody the other day, 12 times they've been to rehab. And that's after they got through the physical withdrawals.
Yeah.
But when they had to deal with the real emotions, ups and downs of life, paying bills, coming up with money, saving money, dealing with people that they've dealt with high for the last 5 years. Now they have to deal with them straight. It's hard.
It's very
It's really
challenging.
hard.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. But again, that's why the powers that be want you addicted early. So when your brain does develop and you realize that this isn't a good thing, it's not a good look to be 24 and living in your parents' basement playing video games, getting high all day long, and not having a job for the last 3.5 years, not having a girlfriend or any friends. That's not a good look. But it took them time to get there, right? And that's the problem. If people didn't get addicted at an early age, they wouldn't be addicted at a older age. And like I said, we have 50 million people that are addicted in this country, and 90% of them started in their teens. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think most of them probably started even sooner than that, because they never learned how to navigate life or to be present with life. The addiction starts so early when you can't be present, so you go away mentally. And then when being away mentally doesn't work anymore, then you need a stronger substance. And the tolerance keeps increasing, and you need more and more and more to disconnect.
Yeah.
It's so painful. And I think that says a lot about our society too, where you can be on the track to heal this very painful pattern, but you still got to make money. You still have to find a job. You still have to get an apartment. You still have to deal with all those things. It's the powers that be don't just cram the addiction down our throats. They create the circumstances for it to thrive and flourish.
100%. 100%, Jillian. Yeah. Well, again, there's certain things that are under our control, some things that are not. There's very little that's under our control. One is what happens under our roof and what we do with our actions and our behavior and how we affect those that we love. That's the one thing we can control. And to getting out in front of it and educating ourselves and educating our kids. Let's just start with that.
Yeah.
Let's just start with that. Okay. Getting the facts. And when I say facts, drug facts, emotional facts, and giving it to our kids and have faith that they, one, will appreciate what we're doing, and two, they'll take some of it in and process it, and it'll make their lives better.
Yeah. This is, again, coming back down to building the relationship, and that's one way to build the relationship right there.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. When I explain trauma to people, I usually explain it as trauma is a thing that disconnects you. and we become disconnected in lots of ways. I've been talking about going away mentally, but that's one way of disconnecting from ourselves. We disconnect from our emotions. We disconnect from the present moment. We can't be with what we're feeling and experiencing. And if we can't be with ourselves, we certainly can't be with somebody else. So if we want to have a relationship with our children, but we can't be with our own emotions, we can't be present at all, then of course we won't be able to be with anybody else. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
really building the relationship with our children is crucial. And of course, if we want to do that, we have to really start by looking at ourselves too, looking at what do I do with my emotions? How do I
Mm-hmm.
navigate pain and discomfort? In
Mm-hmm.
what ways am I addicted and in which ways am I checking out? Because yeah, as we both said, we've all got them, and it can be to substances or it can be to numerous other things, but we're all addicted to something in some way. And yeah, we can start by addressing those in ourselves. We have a lot
Yeah,
of power in that sense.
we do. We do. Sounds good. Okay.
Dave, this has been fantastic. As we're approaching
Me too.
time, tell me,
Yeah.
where can people find you, your work, or your book at?
Yeah. Thank you, Julian. And I appreciated it too. You can find my book, Tip of the Spear, at Amazon, Walmart Books, but I would love people to go to asapcommunity.org. It's free. It's a forum for parents to go to get the facts from drugs, to give them workshops, and most importantly, to put them in contact with other parents who are trying to find the answers for their children too.
Community.
asapcommunity.org. Again, it's free, and it doesn't um, it doesn't take it takes effort, but takes no money. It just takes a willingness to look at how we protect our children.
Mhm.
And so hopefully if we can help out a family or two or a child or two, this talk was well worth it, Julian. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. I'll be sure to link that in the show notes. And before we part ways, I'm wondering, is there any final message that you want to share for anybody who's listening right now?
Just one, and tell your kid, give me 2 minutes. Give me 2 minutes and see where that goes. And in that 2 minutes, know what you're going to say. But one thing you definitely have to put in there is how much you love them.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
you can say, let me give you 2 minutes.
Give me 2 minutes. I love you. Did you know? Did you know THC is
Yeah.
addictive? Did you know 6 out of 10 pills bought on the internet have fentanyl in it? Something that kid can take that's real and use it to help them maybe avoid consequences, or maybe um, help their friends or help them in life. 2 minutes.
Very good. Dave,
All right,
thank you
Julian.
so much. This has been great.
Thanks, man. Have a good day.